So today, Jeff Keighley on the Game Awards YouTube channel announced all of the nominees. Well, not for all the categories, because the Game Awards has like 50 something plus categories, which is way too many. But he did, categories for like best art direction and best, audio or best, performance in a game, things like that. But one that, of course, many people were looking forward to, of course, is for Game of the Year. Now, before I get into my thoughts on the nominees for Game of the Year, I want to welcome you to the domain Gaming, Pop Culture, and Entertainment. I am Brian Daniels, and we talk about video games, movies, professional wrestling, and more here on this channel. So please do me a solid and subscribe to us here on the domain GPC. We're trying to get to 2,000 subscribers. I'd certainly appreciate if you did that. So, for those who don't know, the Game Awards, this is the 10th version of it, 10th iteration of it, 10 years strong, if you will. And it's, organized and started by Jeff Keighley, a very prominent figure in the video game industry. And, well, today they did an announcement at noon Eastern for all the nominees, and this was hosted by Jeff Keighley. Now, before I get to the nominees for the Game Awards themselves, I want to talk about something that the Game Awards had posted on their website, which I found to be very interesting. Had a little FAQ section and talking about Game of the Year and how Game of the Year is chosen. It talked about a jury of panelists that are from the video game community. They didn't say who they were, which they usually tell you in years past who those jury members of the panel are, but one that was very interesting, as you'll see here. It says, are DLCs, expansion packs, and remakes or remasters eligible? And it says, the Game Awards aims to recognize the best creative and technical work each year, irrespective of the format of that content's release. Expansion packs, new game seasons, DLCs, remakes, and remasters are eligible in all categories if the jury deems the new creative and technical work to be worthy of a nomination. Factors such as the newness of the content and its price or value should be taken into consideration. Now, there's only one reason I believe that they put that in there. It's because a very popular DLC released this year for a very massive game, and that being the Elden Ring Shadow of the Erd 3. It's an expansion. Yes, this is a massive expansion, but it is an expansion slash DLC nonetheless for the base game, Elden Ring, a game that has already won Game of the Year a few years ago, a highly respected game, and rightfully so. Now, let's take a look at the nominees this year for Game of the Year. You'll be able to see those here. You've got Astrobot, Balatro, Black Myth Wukong, and then you've got Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erd Tree, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and Metaphor ReFantazio. Now, 5 of those 6 nominees I absolutely agree with. They are all original games, original works, and I've had the pleasure of playing all of those games. I haven't really spent too much time in Metaphor ReFantazio outside of the demo, but nonetheless, all of them are great original works in their own right. Now, my problem is with Elden Ring Shadow of the Erd Tree, which is not a standalone game. It might sound like it could be a equal to Elden Ring, but it isn't. You can't go on any marketplace as of right now. This could change, and purchase Shadow of the Erd Tree as its own separate standalone game. You need to have Elden Ring to play this. And so my problem with this is I strongly feel that the reason why Jeff Keighley and the Game Awards added what you saw earlier to the FAQ section of the Game Awards website is so that they could have an excuse to put Shadow of the Erd Tree here in the Game of the Year nomination. Now, my problem with this is there's already a category for this. It's called Best Ongoing Game. which, I think Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty was in that category last year. It was not nominated, I don't think, for Game of the Year. I don't recall it being that. No, it wasn't. And there's your category: best ongoing game, a game that is still producing ongoing content. And I feel that Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree would have made the most sense to go in that category. When I think of game of the year, I think of a single standalone original game. Now I know the FAQ said something about remakes and remasters. Let me talk about my thoughts on remakes and remasters. Remakes, yeah, I could maybe give a little bit more leeway to. I have a little bit of a thin line for having remakes in a game of the year conversation. Remasters, I don't think should at all be included in a game of the year because you're really just kind of touching up a game. It's kind of like The Last of Us Part 1, which was a remaster of the original game, and then you had The Last of Us Part 2, which was a remaster of The Last of Us Part 2, essentially, that they put out. Here, I don't think that those games would qualify as game of the year because they're already original games that have been out in previous years. My biggest problem with adding an expansion or a DLC, despite how massive it may be, I know there's been people online talking about, what about the Blood and Wine DLC for The Witcher 3? It's still DLC. I don't understand why people can't seem to grasp this or really seem to understand it. I had somebody over on Threads, which you can follow me over on Threads at _ Brian Daniels, tell me that it's the same as TV show seasons, which is not the same because it's still a TV show. I mean, it's like, Supernatural has like what, 10 plus seasons. So it's still Supernatural. It's not like it's Supernatural, the Shadow of the Erdtree, right? It's still a show. So that's not the same comparison at all. I think that's very silly to make that comparison. But I feel and fear this is going to open the floodgates up to having multiple expansions flood game of the year. What if a game from 3 years ago, 4 years ago, maybe even 6 years ago has a new expansion come out? Does that mean that that game, the expansion, should that be allowed to be game of the year? I don't think so. And quite frankly, I don't think that this category should at all have any DLCs, big or small, or expansions be included in game of the year. Matter of fact, I feel strongly that the game that should be in the place of Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree should be, without a doubt, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. A game that is an original game, standalone game. It's not a DLC, it's not an expansion. Should have been there in place of Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, but that's not the reason why I'm mad or upset. I'm upset because this is a DLC. This is a standalone. Once again, I'm not saying that Shadow of the Erdtree is a bad expansion. I'm not saying that Elden Ring is a bad game. It's most certainly not. But you need to have categories here, and there needs to be more guidelines. And Jeff Keighley basically saying that any game is or expansion or DLC is eligible for any category is a big red flag. I think it just makes the Game Awards even more of a joke than it has ever been. Because here's what's going to happen. You've got 5 amazing games here who are all going to be overshadowed now by an expansion, which I don't find to be fair at all. And I think that, you can make a case for Black Myth Wukong being game of the year. You can make a case for Astrobot, which is my personal game of the year, to be game of the year. Any of these 5 games could be game of the year. But Shadow of the Erdtree is not, in its own right, a game. It is an extension of a game. It's an expansion of a game. I could put Shadow of the Erdtree in front of you, and you would tell me you're probably just playing Elden Ring. You probably wouldn't even notice the difference if you had never even played Elden Ring. You probably think you were still just playing Elden Ring, and that's my point. At the end of the day, I think that this is a joke, and it makes a joke of what is Game of the Year. I find it to be insane that there are people out there who are jumping through loops to try to justify that this should be in Game of the Year. I think they're only justifying it because they enjoyed it. There's a lot of extensions and expansions and DLCs I've enjoyed throughout multiple years of gaming having been someone who's gamed for over decades now, for over 3 decades now, and even though I may have enjoyed amazing, incredible DLCs like Blood and Wine on The Witcher 3, they don't deserve a place on Game of the Year for a extension of a game that's been released already. So I just think this is a joke. I have a feeling in the pit of my stomach that Shadow of the Erdtree is going to win this award, and I think it's going to be even more of a joke if it does. And I have a fear that if it does win, we're going to see developers pushing even harder DLCs and expansions when a lot of people don't really care for those still. They want everything to be in the game that they already pay $70 for. So I don't know. I just what I do know is I'm not thrilled about this, and I want to know, what do you think about this? In the comments below, let me know. We do read the comments here. I go through, I comment, I reply to comments. We do that here. So let me know your thoughts on Shadow of the Erdtree, the Elden Ring expansion DLC being nominated for Game of the Year. Let me know your thoughts on that down in the comments below. And thank you guys so much for watching this video. I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.